let's look at the second passage. Back in the early 2000s, an awesome thing happened in the new X-Men comics. Our mutant heroes had been battling giant robots called Sentinels for years. But suddenly, these mechanical overlords spawned a new threat, nano sentinels. Not content to rule Earth with their metal fists, these tiny robots invaded our bodies at the microscopic level. Infected humans were slowly converted into machines cell by cell. I don't know if you're familiar with the X-Men comics and Sentinels and Magneto and everything, but Sentinels are मतलब अगर कॉमिक्स पढ़ रखा है तो फिर ये कंसेप्शन करना बहुत आसान रहता है क्या चल रहा है आइडिया वाइज. बट ठीक है, इवन इफ यू डोंट, सेंटिनल्स विलेन, mechanical villain. Think of Ultron in Avengers, how Ultron was turning people into. अच्छा, मूवी में तो Ultron was not turning people into Ultron. कार्टून के अंदर Ultron is turning people into Ultron. But Ultron, mechanical villain, उसके हिसाब से AI, and they can think for themselves, they can decide for themselves, and their way of solving conflicts about human and mutant existences, eliminate humans and mutant, all conflict is resolved. Okay. Now, a new wave of extremely odd robots is making at least part of the Nano Sentinel story come true. Using exotic fabrication materials like squishy hydrogels and elastic polymers, researchers are making autonomous devices that are often tiny and could turn out to be more powerful than an army of Terminators. Again, this is in reference to popular media. This is also in reference to popular media. Terminator is a movie franchise that had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Albi Bakwala. Okay, but again, even if you don't know it, Terminators, then an army of Terminators. Terminator seems like a powerful figure who can fight very well. Some are 1 centimeter blobs that can skate over water. Other are flat sheets that can roll themselves into tubes, or matchstick-sized plastic coils that act as powerful muscles. Basically, these are tiny materials which can engage in feats of strength or feats of dexterity. No, they won't be invading our bodies and turning us into sentinels, which I personally find a little disappointing. But some of them could one day swim through our bloodstream to heal us. They could also clean up pollutants in water and fold themselves into different kinds of vehicles for us to drive. Unlike a traditional robot, which is made of mechanical parts, these new kinds of robots are made from molecular parts. The principle is the same. Both are devices that can move around and do things independently. But a robot made from smart materials might be nothing more than a pink drop of hydrogel. Instead of gears and wires, it's assembled from 2 kinds of molecules. Some that love water and some that avoid it, which interact to allow the bot to skate on top of a pond. Basically, the difference between these nano robots and the traditional robots is traditional robots are made with mechanical parts. So you have a lever, you have a pulley, you have whatever gear and all those contraptions. In these nano robots, in these small robots, other robots, what we have is simply a molecules, 2 different types of molecules which behave differently to the same stimuli. So in one scenario, the outcome would be different. In the other scenario, outcome would be different. This much we need to understand. Smart materials wala item. And then example ke naam pe they have given, it's assembled from 2 kinds of molecules, some that love water and some that avoid it, which interact to allow the bot to skate on top of a pond. How that exactly works, I don't know. We will see. Sometimes these materials are used to enhance more conventional robots. Now see how wonderful that is. They've basically gone ahead and said conventional wires and gears and pulleys and levers and everything, standard robots. And then these nano robots, molecular level. Now they're saying there is also something in between where standard Robots are enhanced by the help of these nano robots fabrication materials. Sometimes these materials are used to enhance more conventional robots. One team of researchers, for example, has developed a different kind of hydrogel that becomes sticky when exposed to low voltage zap of electricity and then stops being sticky when the electricity is switched off. This putty-like gel can be pasted right onto the feet or wheels of a robot. When the robot wants to climb a sheer wall or scoot across the ceiling, sheer is steep ऐसे मतलब ऐसे वॉल पे चढ़ने की कोशिश कर रहा है अपना रोबोट, इस पे चल के जाना है. Of course, gravity would pull him down, but if he has some sticky material at his feet, it would be easier for him to climb. It can activate its sticky feet with a few volts. One, it is back on the flat surface again. यहाँ पे आया. The robot turns off the adhesive like a light switch. Basically, can you see again? This is an example of smart materials that interact in different ways to different input. Electricity गई तो sticky, electricity नहीं गई तो non-sticky, which is also in line with the example that was mentioned. Some love water and some avoid it. Okay. Robots that are wholly or partly made up of gloop. When he's saying gloop, what he means is these smart materials, because even earlier they were referenced to as blobs. Some are 1 centimeter blobs that can skate over water. When he's saying gloop or when he's saying blob, what exactly he means is there isn't a precise defined shape. They are very, very malleable. They are very, very adjustable. Robots that are wholly or partly made of gloop aren't the future that I was promised in science fiction, but it's definitely the future I want. I'm especially keen on the nanometer scale soft robots that could one day swim through our bodies. Metin City, a director at the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems in Germany, worked with colleagues to prototype these tiny synthetic beasts using various stretchy materials, such as simple rubber, and seeding them with magnetic microparticles. They are assembled into a finished shape by applying magnetic fields. The results look like flowers or geometric shapes made from Tinker Toy Ball and stick modeling kits. They're guided through tubes of fluid using magnets and can even stop and cling to the sides of the tube. ये समझो, he's talking about future applications of this technology and how it can potentially be beneficial. From this writing, from this passage, we can understand the author is trying to reach multiple people. He has there is levity in his writing. He's not very serious and focused and not approaching it very, very somber manner पे. He is making jokes along the way. Additionally, the bigger point that he's trying to make is समझो, swim through our bodies. They have application everywhere. There is application for these special nano robots or new special kinds of robots that are being talked of. Swim through our bodies, say, hopefully you can get the implication he's talking of. Medical application. Although it is not directly stated, but can we take our brain to the idea where, let's say, cancer cells that are present in your body, they can perhaps be treated by these nanometer scale soft robots that are flowing through your bloodstream. They go in there, kill the cancer cells or somehow contain the cancer cells and then come out. ऐसी बातें. या let's say अभी अगर किसी को कोई किडनी स्टोन्स वगैरह हो गया तो जाना पड़ता ना, मतलब ऑपरेशन करना पड़ता है या फिर दवाइयाँ खानी पड़ती, जो भी अंदर भेजा. They go in there, release some sort of chemical, do some sort of activity that helps वो kidney stone को break down करने में and moving on. Swim through our bodies. The implication is clearly medical application in fixing things within our body that right now require surgery. Okay, moving on. अच्छा, funny or at least light article है ये. but then there is a larger point being made. Question 5. Which of the following statements, if true, would be the most direct extension of the arguments in the passage? Option A. X-Men may be created by injecting people with mutant nanogels that will respond to brain's magnetic field. एक्समैन का रेफरेंस खाली इसमें था कि एक्समैन करके एक म्यूटेंट हीरो की किताब है जिसके अंदर नैनो सेंटिनल्स थे, वैसे ही टाइप का डेवलपमेंट अब रियल वर्ल्ड में हो रहा है. एक्समैन की क्रिएशन की बात कहीं नहीं है पैसेज में, तो ये तो बहुत ही वियर्ड ऑप्शन, बट ठीक है. एक्समैन होपफुली वी नो वर म्यूटेंट एज इन चार्ल्स एक्सेवियर एंड एवरीथिंग, होपफुली जानते हो, अच्छे लोग हैं, जानना चाहिए इनके बारे में. In the future, robots will be used to search and destroy diseases even in the deepest recesses of the human body. Nanometer scale soft robots that could one day swim through our bodies. In the future, the robots will be used to search and destroy even diseases even in the deepest recesses of human body. Between A and B, clearly B is the direct extension. Option C. Sentinel robots will be used in warfare to cause large-scale destructive mutations against civilians. Nahi. Again, sentinels. Precise sentinel term was used in reference to the X-Men story arc. Beyond that, sentinel robots have not been referenced. ये तो अलग ही कहानी चल गई. 1 centimeter blobs of gel that have nano robots in them will be used to send messages. Not really. Their message or communication capabilities have not been referenced in the passage. So out of the 4 options, clearly B is the right one. Question 6. Which one of the following statements best summarizes the central point of the passage? Once the stuff of science fiction, nanorobots now feature in cutting-edge scientific research. Because the passage starts off by mentioning कॉमिक बुक के अंदर पढ़ा था, लेकिन अब तो रियल में ही चल रहा है. इनफैक्ट दिस लाइन हियर is precisely the line mentioned here. Now a new wave of extremely odd robots is making at least part of the nano sentinel story come true. ठीक है. Option B. Robots will use nano robots on their feet and wheels to climb walls or move on ceilings. While this is true, was this the central point of the passage, or was this an example of how a combination of traditional robots and these nano robots could be helpful to each other? This is definitely not the central point. Between A and B, A survives. Option C. The field of robotics is likely to feature more and more in comics like the New X-Men. New X-Men was not the focus. New X-Men was a good starting point so that people who are interested in comics can potentially find a comparative scale कि अच्छा book में ऐसा था, comic book के अंदर जैसा था, वो ऐसी बातें हो रही है. This has nothing to do with New X-Men. This is definitely not the central point of the passage. Option D. Nanorobots made from molecules that react to water have become increasingly useful. Again, while this is true, that react to water and don't react to water simultaneously. Example tha, some that love water and some that avoid it. While this is true, this is not the central point of the passage. This is one of the examples of how these nanorobots perform or execute a function. Between A and D, A survives. Answer has to be option A. Question 7. Which of the following statements best captures the sense of the first paragraph? Tiny sentinels called X-Men infected people, turning them into mutant robot overlords. No. X-Men, tiny sentinels infected X-Men. ये देखना. An awesome thing happened in the new X-Men comics. Our mutant heroes had been battling giant robots called Sentinels for years. But suddenly, these mechanical overlords called Sentinels spawned a new threat, Nano Sentinels. Not content to rule Earth with their metal fists, these tiny robots invaded our bodies at the microscopic level. Invaded our bodies at microscopic level. So, tiny sentinels called X-Men? No, X-Men were not the tiny sentinels. ये तो गलत ही है, but देखते हैं. A और B, none of the options listed. बता रहे हैं जनता, while it may not be true for mocks and everything, Never in CAT will you have your answer as none of these or none of the options listed here. In CAT, it will not be. CAT, it will always be a proper option. Next statement. The X-Men were mutant heroes who now had to battle tiny robots called nano sentinels. Okay. Statement was our mutant heroes had been battling giant robots called sentinels for years, but suddenly these mechanical overlords spawned a new threat, nano sentinels. Not content to rule the earth with their metal fists, these tiny robots invaded our bodies at the microscopic level. Infected humans were slowly converted into machines, cell by cell. The X-Men were mutant heroes who now had to battle tiny robots called nano sentinels. As of now, this survives. Option D. People who were infected by nano sentinel robots became mutants who were called X-Men. Not really. They did not become mutants. They were converted into machines. And X-Men, they were not turning into X-Men. X-Men was a separate breed altogether. D भी हट गया. What remains is C. अब C के साथ ऑब्जेक्शन क्या बन रहा था जनता का? This was a fairly popular question जिसको लोग ऑब्जेक्ट कर रहे थे. The X-Men were mutant heroes who now had to battle tiny robots called nano sentinels. X-Men को थोड़ी battle करना था because they were not infecting mutants, they were infecting humans. तो mutant को battle क्यों करना पड़ेगा? ध्यान देना, these were mutant heroes. And the implication is दुनिया में कहीं भी कुछ भी गलत हो रहा है तो हीरो उसके साथ जाके लड़ाई करेंगे. साथ के साथ yes, you can make an argument just because they are heroes, they will not take on सारी दुनिया का बोझ हम सर पे उठाते हैं वाला argue. They are not those sorts of people. But among the options available, this is the only one that can potentially make sense. A नहीं चलेगा, D नहीं चलेगा, B तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं चलेगा. So then what remains is C, that is the best option after the four, has to be the answer. Question 8. Which of the following scenarios, if false, could be seen as supporting the passage? ध्यान देना. Which of the following scenarios, if false, could be seen as supporting the passage? False है तो support करेगा. मतलब currently oppose कर रहा होगा. Which of the following options currently opposes the passage? Which of the following points is in contradiction to the points mentioned in the passage? पहला, there are two kinds of molecules used to make some nanorobots, one that reacts positively to water, the other negatively. This was precisely what was mentioned. It's assembled from two kinds of molecules, some that love water and some that avoid it. Diya hai. So this is in line with what is mentioned in the passage. Statement B, some hydrogels turn sticky when an electric current is passed through them. This potentially has very useful application. यहाँ पे लिखा है hydrogel that becomes sticky when exposed to a low voltage zap of electricity and then stops being sticky when the electricity is switched off. When the robot wants to climb a shear wall or scoot across the ceiling, it can activate its sticky feet with a few volts. ये भी दिया ही हुआ है पैसेज में. A और B में से लड़ाई अगर करनी ही है तो कोई भी कर दो, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Option C. Nano sentinel like robots are likely to be used inject people to convert them into robots cell by cell. Can you see? This is a positive statement. This is a positive statement. This is a negative statement. This is a negative statement. And this passage, despite the initial mention of nano sentinels and the fight that X-Men have to engage with them in, this passage has been very positive in its outlook and humorous. If at all the idea was mentioned that nano sentinel like robots are likely to be used to inject people to convert them into robots cell by cell, passage cannot possibly be this light-hearted. Between A, B, and C, A and B are definitely gone. This is not in line with what is mentioned in the passage. Option D, robots made from smart materials are likely to become part of our everyday lives. बिल्कुल है. This is also क्या बताए implied in the passage कि आगे जाके ये हालत आएगी. They would the future कहाँ था? कहाँ है future? कहाँ है future की बातें? यहाँ पे था. No, they won't be invading our bodies and turning us into sentinels, which I personally find a little disappointing. But some of them could one day swim through our bloodstream to heal us. They could also clean up pollutants in water or fold themselves into different kind of vehicles for us to drive. Robots, some art materials are likely to become part of our everyday lives in the future. This is also referenced in the passage in line with what is mentioned. Therefore, should not be the answer. The answer here has to be option C, and that is the entirety of passage 2.